Hello, readers by eyes and by ears. You guys, we are finally back with the quote-unquote second novel of Devil Venerable Also Wants to Know, which is known as 魔尊也想知道 by Cyan Wings or 青色羽翼. And today we are starting at chapter 40. I hope you guys enjoy this reading as we all lament over the fact that we do not have the final volume of Peerless. Anyway, let's not dwell on the negative and focus on the positive. And that is chapter 40. Who are you, handsome? While speaking, Wenzhao used his spiritual essence to force out the Yeen energy inside his body. He was a void boundary cultivator, and Su Huai's level was too low in comparison, so any effect he had could only be temporary. After the Yeen energy was gone, Wenzhao would be fine. But Su Huai had humiliated him in front of his fellow disciples and his wife, so his expression was rather strained. If Baili Qingmiao wasn't shielding Su Huai, Wenzhao would have taught the core formation brat a lesson. "This is my disciple, Su Huai," said Baili Qingmiao. Now that she had come back to her senses and her emotions were being suppressed by Zhongli Qian, she could speak casually with her shuxiong. She put a hand on Su Huai's shoulder as she introduced him. "Shouldn't he greet his elders then?" Xinye said at Wenzhao's side, an unpleasant look on her face. Su Huai pulled a face. He had only reluctantly accepted Baili Qingmiao. As a ghost cultivator, he had no loyalty to the Shang-Qing sect, and in fact, now that he and Tsong-shoo-eh got along, she had promised to recommend him into the Hellfire Pavilion. If he did good, she said she would even help him get rid of the current Altarmaster Shi and gain the position of Master of Hellfire Pavilion. Su Huai had no wish to show respect to these strangers in front of him. Baili Qingmiao had been taught manners by Shang-Qing's sect since youth and was about to order him to when Immortal Qingxue said, "Huh? I'm an elder. Why don't you greet me?" Su Huai immediately bowed deeply to Qingxue. "This disciple greets Master Qingxue." The assembled members of Shang-Qing's sect were speechless. "Oh, and you?" Qingxue took out a jade with the piece of Liu Xinye's soul sealed inside. "When are you going to repay me my elixir? You're only at deity transformation? A deity transformation nascent soul isn't worth the 7-colored lotus heart. It'll probably even out if you add in your cultivation partner." Liu Xinye, ... Wenzhao, ... Wenzhao quickly grabbed Liu Xinye's hand and led the rest of the disciples to bow to Qingxue. "Greetings to Elder Qingxue." At the same time, Su Huai also bowed, following Zhongli Qian's instructions. That way, neither side was insulted. "Elder, for the past 30 years, we have been searching for a cure for the sect master and unable to find you an elixir. Fortunately, the Lockhart herb is the last thing he needs, and after he wakes, this disciple can leave his duties and accompany his wife to find you a treasure. We beg for your forgiveness," Wenzhao said. Even though he had been embarrassed, he suppressed his emotions and was willing to plead on his wife's behalf. Her shuxiong was such a good husband, Baili Qingmiao thought, and she couldn't help but fall back into her old infatuation. Zhongli Qian slapped his bamboo scroll against his palm, and Su Huai immediately drew the rod of heartbreak. Baili Qingmiao frantically said, "Don't hit me! I'm calm!" Seeing the giant weapon brought out again, Wenzhao quickly dodged out of the way with Liu Xinye. With no one to hit, Su Huai curled his lip and put away his weapon. Since both sides were tense, Zhongli Qian announced, "Let's go check out the volcano. Curing the sect master is what's most important." The standoff was resolved, with everyone heading toward the crater. From Wenzhao's words, when they had arrived at the Violet Spirit Pavilion, the pavilion master had glanced at them through a curtain and sent them all to the crater to come up with a solution on their own, saying that they could have any sprouts they managed to ripen. Everyone had been spending this time racking their brains at the top of the volcano, but had not found a way to restrict the lava to a suitable area. Baili Qingmiao's group didn't even enter the main hall, directly being taken to the crater. No one dared to criticize the Violet Spirit Pavilion. After all, the pavilion had been secluded with no contact with the rest of the cultivation world for years. and they were here to beg their favor. It was already great that they were allowed up to the crater. Hearing that it had been dormant for 3,000 years and was completely safe, Baili Qingmiao's group approached it confidently. Zhongli, Qian, Qingxue, and Su Huai didn't discover anything out of the ordinary, but when Baili Qingmiao stuck her head over the edge, a streak of flame shot toward the sky, aimed right at her face. She pulled back with a cry of shock and barely managed to avoid the fire. The black cloth around her eye had been burned off, though, and fell into the crater. "Shimei, are you okay?" Wenzhao shook off Liu Xinye and charged over to see whether or not Baili Qingmiao's face had been burned. Baili Qingmiao opened her eyes and saw her Shuxiong's concerned face in her right eye. But before she could feel touched, Zhongli Qian's giant face was plastered in her left eye. Looking at Zhongli Qian with one eye and Wenzhao with the other, she nearly went cross-eyed. She shoved Wenzhao off and closed her eyes, turning her head away. "Give me a blindfold." Su Huai handed her a black cloth. After she tied it around her eye, Baili Qingmiao finally let out a breath. Now she could see Wenzhao's hurt expression properly. Wanting to explain, she took a step forward, but Liu Xinye came over to help Wenzhao off the ground, shooting Baili Qingmiao a glare. Baili Qingmiao retreated her steps, thinking that this was for the best. "All this time, the volcano has finally reacted," Yao Wendan said, ignoring the atmosphere. "Shimei, what did you do just now to get it to erupt? It was so precise, too, just aimed at one area." "I didn't do anything." Baili Qingmiao was also confused. She had only stuck her head over slightly, and flames had spewed out. Yet after she backed away, the flames vanished. It was like it was targeting Baili Qingmiao, Zhongli Qian thought, standing at one side. After being with Baili Qingmiao for 30 years, he had gotten the sense that legendary treasures were plentiful around her. He had managed to reach Mahayana after only 30 years, not only because of learning Wordless Child and awakening the path of teaching, but also thanks to the treasures he kept running into which could increase his spiritual essence. He suddenly remembered Wenren E. Baili Qingmiao had told him that she'd twice met Wenren E when he told her that a certain item was fated to her, and wanted her help in retrieving it. Had Wenren E long since discovered Baili Qingmiao's quirk? Zhongli Qian frowned, deep in thought. While everyone discussed how they should awaken the volcano, a scent drifted past on the wind. "This incense, I smelled it back when we met the pavilion master," Yao Wendan said. "Is the pavilion master here to check on the activity at the crater?" As he spoke, several purple-robed women flew towards them, a few of them carrying a radiant carriage. A curtain shrouded the people inside from sight. Approaching the crater, they landed on it, and the 4 servant girls set down the carriage. The leading disciple said, "Who was it that made the volcano react?" The crowd backed away, leaving behind Baili Qingmiao. A deep voice came from inside the carriage. "Indeed, it was you." Baili Qingmiao cocked her head, then cupped her fist respectfully. "This one is Baili Qingmiao. Is the pavilion master implying that we have met before?" "Who knows?" A single hand pushed aside the curtain, and a young man in lavish silver robes emerged. He swept his gaze over Baili Qingmiao's face and said, "Perhaps we met in another life." His black hair was gathered together by a silver band, with a few loose strands draped over his shoulders. He had cold, elegant eyes and colorless lips, and upon catching sight of Baili Qingmiao, had shown a smile without any hint of warmth. "The Shangqing sect is certainly the leader of the righteous sects. Since so many eminent peoples have gathered here, the Violet Spirit Pavilion dares not to be discourteous. Why don't you all stay in the pavilion as guests, while we work together to think of a way to grow the Lockhart herb? There's no problem if we can't. Isn't there one ready? As long as Shangqing sect offers something of equal value in exchange, we aren't unwilling to give it." Everyone. ... Hey now, you weren't saying those things several days ago. Not only were the people there confused, Wenren E also was. The readers of Abusive Romance and God of Annihilation were also dumbstruck. For once, the comments section of both books were aligned, all filled with people saying, "Who are you, handsome?" Even Wenren E had trouble believing his eyes. The Violet Spirit Pavilion Master, the main wife of God of Annihilation, the top female villain in abusive romance, the wandering immortal who Wenren E had found underneath the ice plains and beaten up, was now a man? Yeen Hanjiang watched as Wenren E stood in front of the Misty Dawn Bell, reading for 2 hours straight, then suddenly stopping. He had a strained look on his face, seemingly having run into some problem. "Venerable?" Yeen Hanjiang looked at him in confusion. He couldn't imagine what could stump Wenren E. Nothing. Both revisions stopped there, so Wenren E put his books away. After thinking for a time in front of the bell, he said, "Sec Leader Yeen, it seems we need a change of plans." Wenren E had come to the Violet Spirit Pavilion with 2 plans. The first was destroying the array, fighting his way in, and forcing the wandering immortal to give out her possession technique. The second was demolishing half of the Chuyin Mountain, then communicating his request to the Pavilion Master, making her offer it freely. But now that this unprecedented development had occurred, Wenren E decided on a different plan: to enter the pavilion courteously under different identities. "We need to change our appearances. Let's say we're guest cultivators of the Zhongli clan. We'll hand over greeting slips and follow the regulations. Zhongli Qian should be able to figure out the situation and help cover for us." Wenren E thought up a new plan on the spot, relaying it to Yeen Hanjiang. He had met the pavilion master before, and without a disguise, he would be recognized. He might never be able to figure out why the story had taken such a turn. If the pavilion master, as a major female character, changed her fate and avoided marrying Wenzhao, then didn't that mean that as 2 major male characters, Wenren E and Yeen Hanjiang's fates could also be changed? Xuanyuan sect was naturally rich in disguising techniques. Yeen Hanjiang took out 2 masks. These weren't like the skin masks used in the Jianghu, and appeared to have 2 lumps of dough. Once stuck on one's face, it could be kneaded to one's liking. This was a very low-level magic item without much spiritual energy, and couldn't do anything other than change one's appearance. However, as long as no one touched your face, you were certain to not be discovered. "Sec Leader Yeen, why don't you make a face for this Venerable?" Wenren E said. Yeen Hanjiang stuck the dough on Wenren E's face, carefully smoothing it with his fingers. "What would the Venerable want to look like?" "Anything you want," Wenren E said. He had faith in Zhongli Qian's intelligence. Whatever his disguise looked like, Zhongli Qian could see through it and help cover for him. Yeen Hanjiang was quite tall, just an inch shorter than Wenren E. He gazed intently at Wenren E's face, shaping it carefully. After he created a face, he hesitated and was about to wipe it out and start over when Wenren E said, "Are you done yet? Let me see." With the flicker of a finger, a mirror of ice appeared before him. Wenren E stared silently at the face in the reflection. This was exactly the same as his face. Only the eyes were slightly different, looking a bit more relaxed and resembling the General Wenren stationed at the border town 100 years ago. "Is this how I've always looked in your eyes?" Wenren E felt a spark of annoyance, though he didn't know why. General Wenren was just this Venerable's identity when he walked the mortal world. This Venerable has long since progressed past that. If you remain stuck in that time, you will never reach Mahayana. "It's not that," Yeen Hanjiang said. "It's just—" He himself didn't know how to explain it. His Venerable had looked at him with such a warm and attentive expression. His hands had moved on their own at the time. "This subordinate will make the Venerable a new one," Yeen Hanjiang said quickly. "No need." Wenren E waved a hand, and the mask became a completely unremarkable face, his black robes also transforming to the gray robes of the Zhongli clan's guest cultivators. Yeen Hanjiang stuck the dough on his face and was about to sculpt an ordinary appearance for himself when Wenren E said, "Let me do it." A forceful hand landed on Yeen Hanjiang's face. Hanjiang stiffened, his whole body freezing up, not even daring to breathe. After creating an average face for Hanjiang, Wenren withdrew his hand and said, "Sect Leader Yeen, you mustn't always live chasing this venerable shadow." This subordinate hasn't. Hanjiang was unable to continue. He had once told Zhongli Qian that he wouldn't desire, would only watch from a distance, and therefore he would never feel resentment. But fantasies were difficult to do away with once they rose. He wanted to be General Wendan's most loyal subordinate. Even if they were both mortals, he would be happy just fighting alongside him, even dying alongside him. The Lord of Demons was too powerful and too impossible to pursue. Hanjiang only dared to hold this small wish, hoping that he would have such a chance in his next life. Wenren looked at him and sighed quietly. When the army-crushing sword was forged, he had felt Hanjiang begin to dissolve his psychological blocks and move past the thoughtlessly loyal left protector he had been. Everything was going well then, so why had he regressed and gotten even worse than before? Sect Leader Yeen, is there something important that you've been hiding from this venerable? No. Hanjiang trailed off again. He really was hiding something from his venerable, something he could never admit. Even if after he died, someone interrogated his soul, he wouldn't let a word slip. He lifted his head and looked at Wenren, his eyes filled with resolution. It was the resolution to take his secret to the grave. This subordinate does have something on his mind. However, it is unrelated to the venerable. The venerable need not concern himself, as this subordinate will carry out his duties regardless. Wenren reached out, and his hand froze the instant before it grabbed hold of Hanjiang's throat. Hanjiang didn't avoid him, instead raising his head and making it easier for Wenren to grab him. After we return to Xuanyuan sect, go to the Forbidden Grounds and reflect for 50 years. If after 50 years you cannot resolve your concern... Wenren stopped. He couldn't think of a punishment, and at last said, "We'll talk again after 50 years. Reflect for 50 years. That was just as well. Hanjiang lowered his head with a bitter smile. Seeing nothing he said could make Hanjiang listen, Wenren felt oddly powerless. He raised a hand and sounded the misty dawn bell, announcing with the bell's sound, "We guests of the Zhongli clan under Zhongli Qian, Wen-jow and Hanjiang are here to call upon young Master Jong-lee, hoping the Violet Spirit Pavilion will relay him this message." Zhongli Qian, hearing this, ... Wen-jow and Hanjiang. Was Wenren worried that people wouldn't know who they were? Chapter 41. The Second Book. Zhongli Qian could only awkwardly explain, "It's Zhongli Wen-jow and Zhongli Hanjiang of the Zhongli clan, who were members of a branch family 200 years ago, later joining the clan as guest cultivators and becoming my advisors. After hearing about the volcano, I sent word to them, hoping they could lend a hand. Could they be permitted to enter?" He was courteous, and as a Mahayana cultivator, his words held weight. The pavilion's disciples took him to see the pavilion master to report the news. Zhongli Wen-jow and Zhongli Hanjiang. Those names are... The pavilion master rested his forehead on his fist as he read the greeting slips Zhongli Qian had written. Zhongli Qian had offered his apologies that the two guest cultivators had neglected to give greeting slips, and thus he had written some up with their names on them, hoping for the pavilion master's forgiveness. The Violet Spirit Pavilion master's eyes were stuck on those two words, Wen-jow and Hanjiang. So Zhongli Qian stepped in and said with a faint smile, "The pavilion master may not know that the Zhongli clan cultivates the path of sages. Each disciple chooses a branch of learning as their foundation. Each of the 6 arts of gentlemen, rites, music, archery, charioteering, literature, and arithmetic are included. Zhongli Wen-jow cultivates rites, while Zhongli Hanjiang cultivates music. These two have some scholarly whims and wanted to make sure others knew what they studied. So, took the courtesy names Wen-tsun and Yin-jiang. Their birth names are Zhongli Wen and Zhongli Yeen. Really quick footnote. For Wen-tsun, we have to ask and to obey, and then Yin-jiang, meaning music, and then general. Okay, returning to the reading. As their manner of greeting truly was improper, Qian would like to apologize in their stead. He cupped his hands before him, his arms extending straight as he bent at the waist, manner extremely proper and polite. The pavilion master straightened up and, after glancing at Zhongli Qian, said, "For these 30 years, news has been flying that the Zhongli clan embarrassed themselves and passed up on a great treasure when expelling Zhongli Qian. I thought it was an exaggerated rumor, but after meeting the crane-haired wanderer in person, I have realized what a true gentleman should be." "The pavilion master is overstating," Zhongli Qian said with a faint smile. "The pavilion master has always secluded itself from the outside world, and today we have received too many guests. Since the volcano has erupted with no warning, I originally wished to seal the mountain and allow no other outsiders. But at young Master Zhonglee's request, they can be allowed to stay a few days. Many thanks to Pavilion Master." Seeing the pavilion master put down the greeting slips, a weight vanished from Zhongli Qian's chest. He went to the Misty Dawn Bell with a few other pavilion disciples. A group of female disciples had blushed upon seeing Zhongli Qian and bombarded him with questions along the way, asking why his hair was white and what relationship he had with Baili Qingmiao. Zhongli Qian answered straightforwardly, and when he said that he and Baili Qingmiao had only treated each other as siblings over the past 30 years, the girl's eyes brightened. With the Violet Spirit Pavilion's array, no one could fly except using the pavilion master's carriage and flying boats, and the boats traveled much slower than Zhongli Qian could. Sitting with a group of beautiful women, Zhongli Qian was uncomfortable the whole way, and at last managed to make it to the Misty Dawn Bell. As the disciples opened the barrier, Zhongli Qian sensed Wenren E and Yeen Hanjiang together. He made sure to speak first. "It's been a while, brothers." He rushed before the disciples to grab the two hands, trying to signal to them. The moment he touched Wenren E's hand, he hesitated. He turned toward Wenren E, and though his eyes were blindfolded, confusion was clear on his face. "Thank you for your greeting, young Master Zhongli," Wenren E said coldly. "Why don't we talk inside?" Wenren E hadn't predicted that Zhongli Qian would rush over to grab his hand and wasn't able to avoid him in time. Zhongli Qian, touching his fake arm, had instantly sensed something was off about it. Zhongli Qian also knew they couldn't discuss this right now and quickly introduced Wenren E and Yeen Hanjiang to the rest of the disciples. Seeing the two looked plain and unremarkable and comparable to Zhongli Qian, and they also acted rather uncaring, the girls stuck by Zhongli Qian the entire way back. Upon returning to their rooms, Zhongli Qian immediately transmitted, "Sec Master Wenren, what happened to your arm?" "We can discuss that later. Tell me about the pavilion master," Wenren E replied just as quickly. Zhongli Qian could only let the subject drop. Seeing that Yeen Hanjiang had already put up a soundproofing array, he spoke without concern. "I have 3 doubts about the pavilion master. First, each disciple of the Violet Spirit Pavilion is female, except for the pavilion master. Second, the eruption was completely unpredictable, and the pavilion master appeared too quickly. He appeared when the flames had already subsided. Considering the speed of his carriage, he must have set out before the eruption. According to my calculations, if he had started preparing to set off for the crater from the time of Baili Qingmiao's arrival, then the timing would be perfect. Third, our guests' arrangements." Zhongli Qian drew a map of the Violet Spirit Pavilion on the table out of spilled tea. He tapped one of the rooms and said, "This is where Baili Qingmiao is staying." "They have a guest house right next to the pavilion master's residence?" Wenren E said. He squinted at the map and felt reminded of someone. "I suspect that his goal is Miss Baili," said Zhongli Qian. "Has Sir Wenren also noticed that Miss Baili has particularly good luck?" "This Venerable knows." Wenren E waved a hand and had the tea traces on the table evaporate without a trace. "Not only me, but one other person." He quickly went over his encounter with the Violet Spirit Pavilion's Supreme Elder in the 1,000-mile ice plains over 40 years back. After some thought, Zhongli Qian said, this makes sense. I suspect the Pavilion Master is a woman disguised as a man. If she's the wandering immortal this Venerable defeated 40 years ago, why would she possess a man? Wenren said. I believe we'll find out over the next few days, Zhongli Qian said, his bamboo scroll in hand. Only 2 days had passed when the Pavilion Master took out his precious Lockhart herb, gathering the Shang-Qing sect disciples and the 3 Zhongli clan visitors and announcing, I've already brought out the herb and I'm willing to give it to Shang-Qing sect, under one condition. If it doesn't violate our principles, the Shang-Qing sect will gladly accept, said Wenzhao, standing. These lines were exactly the same as the book. In the book, what followed would be the Pavilion Master demanding Wenzhao's hand in marriage. Now that she was a man, what would happen? Wenren E watched intently. It's very simple. I just want Baili Qingmiao to marry into the Violet Spirit Pavilion. The Pavilion Master looked at Baili Qingmiao, seated the nearest to him, and smiled warmly with a tender look in his eyes. No way! Okay. 2 voices spoke at once, belonging to Wenzhao and Xinye. Naturally, Wenzhao had said no way. Hearing his wife say okay, he glared at her. He couldn't squabble with her in public, though, and after only a glance suppressed his anger and turned to the Pavilion Master. Even if this doesn't violate common principles, it is a major decision in my Shimei's life. I cannot make it for her. I don't believe the decision is yours. The Pavilion Master ignored Wenzhao, only looking toward Baili Qingmiao. He extended the Lockhart herb to her and said, If you just agree and form a soul bond with me, this can be yours. Marrying him and also form a soul bond? Cultivation partners rarely made soul bonds. With a soul bond, they could truly be together in life and death. As if one died, so would the other. Even Wenzhao and Xinye hadn't taken one. At the end of abusive romance, Wenzhao hadn't formed one with Baili Qingmiao either. In God of Annihilation, the Blood Demon Elder had warned Wenzhao to never make a soul bond and let his life depend on another person. This was nothing more than a burden. Shuxiong, this is for Master's life, Xinye said word for word, staring at her husband. The Pavilion Master is a Mahayana stage cultivator, so Baili Qingmiao will only be benefited by forming a soul bond with him. And with the soul bond, they won't be able to betray each other. Since the Pavilion Master made this request, he's certainly not planning to steal Baili Shimei's essence. His intent must be genuine. Shimei hasn't refused, so why are you so agitated? You... Wenzhao pointed a finger at his wife. He nearly slapped her across the face. He forcefully pushed down his anger and ran to Baili Qingmiao's side. Shimei, think clearly. Don't dishonor yourself. In the original story, Baili Qingmiao was heartbroken upon hearing the Pavilion Master wanted to marry Wenzhao, begging him to reconsider in tears. Wenzhao had said pretty much the same thing Xinye did. Shimei, this is Master's life. Now that the Pavilion Master had swapped genders, Wenzhao was saying the complete opposite. Wenren E had already figured out most everything. He didn't speak, just narrowed his eyes at Baili Qingmiao and waited for her decision. Su Huai was a junior, and it wasn't his place to speak in this situation. He knew his master was an idiot. When he broke through the core formation stage, because he was a ghost cultivator, he had gotten a deity transformation stage tribulation and sustained serious injuries. His master had carried him to Reminiscence Valley in search of a wandering immortal healer. The healer put her through all sorts of trouble, separating her from Zhongli Qian and immortal Qingxue with an array, then demanding her nascent soul as payment. Su Huai's idiot master really offered up her nascent soul. Fortunately, Zhongli Qian was sharp and broke the array in time. Master Qingxue gave the wandering immortal a beating, then threatened to turn him into a ghost and eat him. The healer finally agreed to treat Su Huai. That was when Su Huai truly recognized Baili Qingmiao as his master. It was also for his master's sake that he let Qingxue mess with his bonded weapon. Otherwise, what cultivator would want to use a weapon like that? But he was willing to for his master. Su Huai was afraid his master would agree, so he seized Qingxue's hand. She was the strongest and most senior person here, and the only one with the right to refuse for Baili Qingmiao. "What are you grabbing me for?" Qingxue gave Su Huai a look. "If you want something, just say it." Su Huai, ... Fortunately, Zhongli Qian was long since familiar with his companion's habits. He quickly rose and said, "Perhaps the pavilion master doesn't know this, but Baili Qingmiao cannot be someone's cultivation partner." "Huh? Why?" The pavilion master reclined on his chair, looking attentively at Zhongli Qian. His gaze was warmer than when he had looked at Baili Qingmiao. Baili Qingmiao also rose. "Pavilion master, because of a previous accident, Brother Zhongli and I had heart-linking parasites placed in us. They are very powerful parasites, and though Brother Zhongli has reached Mahayana over these 30 years, he has not figured out how to remove them. To tell the truth, young Master Zhongli is just a step away from ascending, yet he has been holding himself back because of me." Hearing Baili Qingmiao refuse, Su Huai sighed in relief. "Oh? Let me see your parasites," said the pavilion master. He reached out and took their wrists in both hands, sending his spiritual essence into their meridians. He found there really were resonating goo insects inside them, which he was unable to eliminate with his power. "This shouldn't be," he muttered. "How did this happen? It wasn't like this." Wenren E heard these words and his expression froze. He watched him closely. The man looked somewhat like a wandering immortal he had taught a lesson to years ago, but not exactly the same. And that wandering immortal had recognized Baili Qingmiao's divinity over 40 years ago, but never acted and stayed hidden until now. Had something changed? After considering things over, Wenren E came up with a wild idea. Jong-lee Wenzhao stretched languidly and, acting as if he was bored by the internal affairs of Shangqing's sect, took a book out of his sleeve. Seeing him, the people around felt he was a bit rude, but weren't in any position to criticize him. After all, he did have nothing to contribute to the matter of this wedding, and just watching the drama unfold wasn't too proper either. The Zhongli clan's members always had their noses in books, and Zhongli Qian's bonded weapon was a bamboo scroll. Maybe this book was Zhongli Wenzhuan's weapon. It was quite an odd book. A young man was drawn on the cover, a colored picture as opposed to the ink wash paintings currently popular in the mortal world. The man's facial proportions were a bit exaggerated, but he looked handsome nonetheless. In large characters across the cover was God of Annihilation, Volume 1. Seeing that book, the pavilion master immediately let go of Baili Qingmiao and Zhongli Qian and stood up, eyes pinned on the book in Wenren E's hand. "How did you—" He cut himself off. Turning a cold look over the assembled group, he said, "If you won't agree to this marriage, then we have nothing to discuss. Come to me when you change your mind." He turned and walked away, leaving everyone else looking at each other helplessly. Wenren E transmitted separately to Zhongli Qian and Yeen Hanjiang, who had both noticed something was odd. "Don't come to my room later. Give him time to reveal his plan." Putting away the book, he returned alone to his room. After lying on the bed reading for a while, he heard a knock at the door. Opening it, he saw a girl on the other side, saying the pavilion master needed to meet with him and requesting Sir Zhongli Wenzhao go to the pavilion master's quarters alone. Without any hesitation, Wenren E took the book and set off alone. After he entered the pavilion master's room, the pavilion master locked the doors and set up several arrays. He finally said coldly, "Where did you get the book? You brought it out on purpose, didn't you? What did you figure out?" "I seem to not understand what the pavilion master is asking," Wenren E said. "I just picked up a book for idle reading, and its contents turned out to be rather intriguing. Since I was bored, I took it out to read." "Since you got this book, your name isn't Zhongli Wenzhun, Zhongli Kuang, Cun Zhenqi, Yao Jiaping. You're Zhongli Kuang!" the pavilion master exclaimed. "I heard you were done away with by the Zhongli clan. Did you possess this Zhongli Wenzhuan's body to come back to life? Right. Since you have this book, you probably learned techniques to revive yourself." "Since you think I'm Zhongli Kuang, let's just say I am," said Wenren E, flipping through the book. However, there's one part of this book that's particularly intriguing. Right here, it says the Violet Spirit Pavilion Master is a renowned beauty, Wenzhao's wife, a gentle and dedicated woman. Upon coming to the pavilion, I was rather surprised to find the Pavilion Master was a man. "Give me that book!" the Pavilion Master yelled, reaching for it. Wenren E flashed away. "At this point, there's no use in you hiding it. I've obtained Volume 1 of God of Annihilation. Have you obtained one of the other volumes? Why don't we exchange reading material?" Having been seen through, the Pavilion Master was silent for a moment. "I have a third volume, the end of the story. Do you want to know why this story is called God of Annihilation? The third volume will tell you. If you want to know, then hand over the first volume to me." Chapter 42. Reencounter on the Battlefield. Wenren absolutely could not accept an exchange, not in this life or the next. All he needed to do was confirm that the Pavilion Master possessed the third volume of God of Annihilation. Where it was, whether or not it was fake, or whether or not the Pavilion Master was willing to hand it over, didn't matter. After all, he would hand it over eventually. Wenren spread his hands casually. "In that case, why don't you let me have a look at the third volume?" "What? Ridiculous!" The Pavilion Master shook his head. "Zhongli Kwang, your name suits you. Do you know exactly who you're facing?" Really quick footnote. It says that Zhongli Kwang means out of control. Returning to the reading. He raised his hands, ringing a pair of golden bells tied to his wrists. Their crisp sound brought forth a wave of spiritual energy and pressure, making the surrounding array resonate with it. The 4 spiritual stones that acted as the focus of the array sat in the corners of the room, carved with patterns unique to the Violet Spirit Pavilion, and the bells caused the engravings to activate. Countless golden threads formed in the air, surrounding Wenren E. With the turn of the Pavilion Master's wrists, the golden threads wrapped tight and bound Wenren E in their midst. This array affected both the body and soul. The Pavilion Master had set it up long before Zhongli Kwang entered. Even if Zhongli Kwang had used the first volume to obtain the locations of heavenly treasures and risen to the peak of Mahayana over these past years, he was still within the cultivation world. This array from the third volume was a divine array. Even if the Pavilion Master wasn't strong enough to use it at its full power, as long as he made the preparations, he could restrain an immortal of the upper realms. Seeing that Zhongli Kwang was trapped, the Pavilion Master lowered his arms, letting his sleeves fall over the bells. "Zhongli Kwang, we don't have any conflict of interests. All I want is to take a look at the first volume, so why are you being so stubborn?" "This Venerable isn't being stubborn," Wenren E said from within the array. "This Venerable is trying to figure something out." "This Venerable?" The Pavilion Master frowned. That title brought back unpleasant memories for him. But it was of no matter. Even if he did meet that person today, he had no more need to fear him. "Even you can call yourself Venerable?" Wenren E put away his book and sighed. "Ever since you acted, this Venerable has been considering how to take you prisoner without alerting anyone. As this Venerable's powers are immense, it is quite a hard task." "Such arrogance!" the Pavilion Master said, but he raised his golden bells again, watching Zhongli Kwang vigilantly. Zhongli Kwang might have learned some secret technique from within the pages of Volume 1. "This Venerable truly doesn't wish to expose his identity. Ah, but now that I already know why you're a man, I suppose it doesn't really matter." Wenren E stood up, an unseen wind stirring his robes. They changed from scholarly clothes to his own black robes embroidered with gold threads, as a halberd of the same color appeared in his hand. "You're not Zhongli Kwang! You're Wenren E!" the Pavilion Master cried. His pupils shrank, and he seemed to be remembering something painful. 42 years ago, this Venerable made an agreement with you, hoping that in 100 years you'd be worth fighting," Wenren E said with a cold smile. "From what I see, it would be useless to give you 1,000 years. This Venerable has grown tired of waiting." Blinding light radiated from the 7-killing halberd as it channeled the power of its star. The entire mountain began to shake. The Shangqing sect disciples, who were currently discussing amongst themselves in Baili Qingmiao's room, felt a tremor under their feet. "What's going on?" "Is the volcano going to erupt?" said Yow Wendan doubtfully. Tsong-shoo's body reacted before her mind caught up. She picked up Su Huai in one hand and Baili Qingmiao in the other, yelling, "Run! Get as far away from Chuyin Mountain as possible!" She didn't say that for the sake of the Shangqing sect disciples, but for Zhongli Qian. When the ground started shaking, Zhongli Qian pretty much guessed what had happened. Hearing Tsong-shoo-eh, he didn't hesitate and followed directly after her. Not more than a second had passed from when the ground began shaking to when Tsong-shoo-eh and Zhongli Qian ran out of the room when the misty dawn bell shattered. The array surrounding the Violet Spirit Pavilion broke with it, and without its restrictions, the group could fly. Tsong-shoo-eh and Zhongli Qian flew up without pause, stopping nearly a kilometer above the volcano. "Elder, what happened?" Su Huai said frantically. He had never met Wenren E. Tsong-shoo-eh set Baili Qingmiao and Su Huai down and said coldly, "Just look at the sky. I've only seen these celestial signs once. 31 years ago." Su Huai looked up and found the night sky dark, with only 2 stars shining brighter than the moon. They were Polis and Alcade. 31 years ago, at the conclusion of Wenren E's clash with 21 experts of the righteous sects, Polis had shown such radiance above. With a rumble, the entirety of the Violet Spirit Pavilion atop the mountain peak crumbled. Lava spewed from the mountain's mouth at a hellish temperature that would destroy any transformation deity or below cultivator who touched it, body and soul. Wenzhao led several deity transformation and above cultivators to rescue everyone else, and managed to arrive at Tsong-shoo's group, covered with ash, before the lava could reach them. In less than 5 minutes, the snowy mountain peak was covered with lava, the heat causing the air to ripple above it. The Violet Spirit Pavilion had been transformed into hell on earth. "What happened?" Wenzhao said, still panicked, holding a crying Liu Xinye in one arm. "Why did the volcano suddenly erupt? Where are Zhongli Wensuan and Zhongli Hanjiang?" Tsong-shoo gave him a cold look. She lifted a finger slightly and pointed to the center of the field of magma. Wenzhao only saw a man in a black and gold robe with a halberd in hand, hovering above the flames. Behind him was a streak of frosty sword light. When the eruption happened, everyone had fled for the sky. Only Hanjiang faced the spurting magma to search for Wenren E, joining the battle against the pavilion master. It's you people! You people again! Of course it's you!" The pavilion master pointed a finger at them, having flashbacks of being beaten black and blue 42 years ago. It was like the scene from 42 years ago had returned. Once again, frost and snow were replaced by raging flames as the two stood before him, wielding a halberd and a sword, utterly crushing him. "Your guess was correct," Wenren E said. "This book did belong to Zhongli Kuang. This Venerable killed him, so obviously this Venerable has taken possession of his book. The same will happen to you." Wenren E grabbed the pavilion master's arm in one hand. Before the pavilion master could resist, he felt an unspeakable agony in his arm. Not the pain of his body being damaged, but of his soul being shredded and dissolved. He quickly severed his own arm with spiritual energy, but was unable to stop the corrosion of his soul. He had to grit his teeth and tear off part of his soul as well. Breathing hard, he watched his arm and soul dissolve into blood, gathering in Wenren E's palm. The sweet scent of blood hit Wenren E's nose. He stared at the orb of blood floating in his palm. All he needed to do was absorb it, and all the spiritual essence he'd used up in this battle, as well as his arm, would be restored. This was the soul of a wandering immortal, after all. After quite some time, he smiled slightly and opened his hand. The blood fell and vanished into the lava below. The lava took in the pavilion master's soul, letting out puffs of smoke as the pavilion master watched. His body shouldn't hurt anymore, but deep inside, he felt the pain of being burned. It was as if someone was roasting his arm over a flame. He could nearly hear the sizzle of his flesh. "You're a blood cultivator," the pavilion master cried. "How?" He wanted to ask more questions, but Yeen Hanjiang didn't give him the chance. A thrust of the army-crushing sword pierced through the pavilion master's throat. Oh. "The Venerable wants your book. Your only choices are to give it or refuse," Yeen Hanjiang said coldly. Meeting the heartless gazes of the two demonic cultivators, the pavilion master realized that he had no qualifications to negotiate with them. If he handed over the book, he might survive. If he didn't, he would certainly die. "The two of you are powerful. Probably no one in the cultivation world is stronger than you, Wenren E. I acknowledge this," the pavilion master smiled bitterly. He couldn't speak, so he transmitted his words to Wenren E alone. "But you'll die someday, Lord of Demons. Everyone will die. Only one person can survive in the end. I'll say it again. Trade your volume for mine." "Do you think that if you refuse to give it up, this Venerable will be afraid to act against you for fear of losing it?" Wenren E said. "You don't know how we in the demonic sects do business. We can take apart your soul, turn you into a puppet, or put parasites in you. We're not lacking in options. Sect leader Yeen, take him back to the Xuanyuan sect." Yeen Hanjiang picked up the limp body of the pavilion master and was about to leave when Wenzhao came charging up. "Who are you people? What do you want with the pavilion master? I, Wenzhao of Shanqing's sect, will not allow you to take action against the Violet Spirit Pavilion while I'm standing here." No matter how much Wenren E and the readers of abusive romance despised Wenzhao, he was the protagonist of 2 novels and his appearance was without faults. He didn't have Wenren E's domineering aura, but could not be overlooked, and he wasn't as polite and perceptive as Zhongli Qian, or as silently devoted as Yeen Hanjiang. He wasn't even as youthful and lively as Su Huai, but he was handsome, and his appearance overflowed with righteousness. The author had given him a perfect face that showed at a glance that he was a hero of the righteous sects, the future pillar of the cultivation world. He had sharp brows and bright eyes, which now eloquently expressed his anguish for the Violet Spirit Pavilion, his determination to stake his life in defense of the pavilion master, even if Wenren E was impossible for him to beat. Wenren E knew that Wenzhao truly was this kind of person. Both novels acknowledged that he was a righteous man, capable of sacrificing his life for his sect members. He would even sacrifice the one he loved to save his fellow disciples and sect elders. Even when he did something wrong in the books, it wasn't his fault, and he turned out to have been tricked by someone. Several reviews in God of Annihilation had said it followed in the footsteps of traditional literature. The male lead was overflowing with righteousness and had close bonds with his friends, just that he didn't have proper relations with women, and his worldview was a bit lowly. At this moment, Wenzhao genuinely wanted to protect the Violet Spirit Pavilion. This was also the first time he'd seen Wenren E's face, and the first time he faced down the unleashed power of the Lord of Demons. His mental master warned him incessantly to run, saying that he had no hope of beating Wenren E at this time. But Wenzhao didn't back down a single step. Even if he died today, he was determined to save the pavilion master. Baili Qingmiao and her group had followed behind him. She stared, frozen, at her Shuxiong facing down a hostile Wenren E and opened her mouth to beg for mercy. "Baili Qingmiao," Wenren E said, "if you say one word, this Venerable will kill one of your Shanqing sect's people. This Venerable does not like to hear people prattle on. Let's see how many people in your sect you're willing to beg for." Baili Qingmiao covered her mouth, too afraid to say a single word. A daring disciple of Shanqing's sect shouted, "Shimei, don't be scared. Let's attack him together. Who cares if he's strong? We can't let him take away the—" He turned to the strongest person on his side, Immortal Qingxue, for reassurance, but before he could finish speaking, a skeletal hand pierced through his chest. He turned his head with difficulty and saw that his attacker was that very immortal Qingxue he had looked up to. The Xuanyuan sect will not betray its own. Tsong-shoo-eh withdrew her hand, yanking out the disciple's soul. Boast according to your own ability. Instead of praying to the heavens or the earth, better to rely on yourself. Hot winds stirred her black robe, revealing her body, which was half flesh and half bone. Over these last 30 years, Tsong-shoo-eh could have regrown her flesh, but she was quite satisfied with how she looked right now. Ew. She had been investigating how to use the powers of a wandering immortal with half her body and a ghost cultivator with the other, determined to continue cultivating the Asura path. Su Huai had given her the inspiration. He was a unique existence, his soul being a ghost cultivator while the methods of the Shangqing sect existed in his body. If he hadn't died in the book, who knew what cultivation path he could have created? Tsong-shoo-eh dropped the body of the disciple into the flames. Wenzhao dove for it and managed to grab it at the last second, burning his arm. "Why are you doing this, Elder Qingxue?" he cried. "I am the left protector of Xuanyuan sect, Tsong-shoo-eh." Half of Tsong-shoo-eh's face slowly turned into a skull. She gave Baili Qingmiao a half-warm, half-horrifying smile. This protector has to thank Baili Qingmiao's assistance 31 years ago, or she already would have been sent on. "Master Qingxue, you..." Tears flowed down Baili Qingmiao's face. She was unable to believe that her master was a demonic cultivator and such a heartless person. "Have this back." Tsong-shoo-eh tossed the disciple's soul at Baili Qingmiao. "I owe you for saving my life. In the future, if you need help, just come find me." Baili Qingmiao caught her fellow disciple's soul with an expression as if she'd been struck by lightning. The person she had risked her life for to save back then was actually a demonic cultivator who had killed countless members of her sect. The master she had looked up to had backstabbed one of her Shishongs without mercy. Jong-lee Qian, feeling her anguish, sighed lightly. He had matured over the years and understood many things, but he still couldn't figure out what Wenren E was thinking, or what he planned. He approached the pavilion master and said, "Pavilion master, whatever it is that Sir Wenren wants, I urge you to just give it to him. From what I know of Sir Wenren, if he agrees to not harm you, he will never go back on his word." "What do you understand?" The hole through the pavilion master's throat buzzed as he spoke. "I don't want to live like that. I'd rather die than live like that." He grabbed the army-crushing sword and yanked it out. Glaring at Wenren E, he reversed the circulation of his chi and prepared to destroy his nascent soul. Wenren E lifted a hand, and a wisp of blood chi entered his body, instantly taking control of it. The pavilion master couldn't die if he tried. "Now this Venerable is curious," Wenren E transmitted to him. "What exactly is written in the last volume that you'd rather die than hand it over?" Chapter 43. Burning Sky Immortal. Wenren E planned to take the pavilion master no matter what. It was of no concern that the Shangqing disciples wouldn't be able to save their sect master without the Lockhart herb. After all, he was the one who had injured their sect master. The idea that he would help him recover was laughable. Seeing Yeen Hanjiang was about to leave with the pavilion master, Wenzhao tried to charge him, but was held back by his fellow disciples. "Shusho, even Immortal Qingxue was a Xuanyuan sect mole, so what chance do we have left?" Liu Xinye said, holding his wrist. "Just bear it, okay?" Wenzhao's body relaxed, though his fists stayed clenched, as he berated himself for his own powerlessness. If they didn't make a fuss, Wenren E naturally wouldn't exterminate all of them. Also, Wenzhao was still important to the events of the third volume of God of Annihilation. Before reading the third volume, Wenren E decided to leave him alone for the time being. Before they departed, Wenren E glanced back at the heartbroken Baili Qingmiao and transmitted to her, "You can follow this Venerable back to Xuanyuan sect." Wenren E didn't mind that Tsong-shoo-eh had exposed her identity to avoid being pushed forward to fight him. He'd never expected Tsong-shoo's undercover work to amount to anything. Getting between Baili Qingmiao and Wenzhao was already far beyond his expectations. But her identity put Baili Qingmiao in a bad position. It was uncertain what would happen to Baili Qingmiao if she returned to Shangqing sect, so Wenren E made his offer, letting Baili Qingmiao choose for herself. Baili Qingmiao shook her head wordlessly. She had sustained too heavy a shock, and if it weren't for Zhongli Qian forcibly suppressing her emotions, she would have started sobbing on the spot. Tsong-shoo-eh extended a hand toward Su-huai. She had been planning to raise Su-huai as the next master of the Hellfire Pavilion. To hell with Tsong-sheen. Su-huai also silently declined. His master was such an idiot. He had to stay. Zhongli Qian gave Wenren E a nod. With the influence of the heart-linking parasite, he had to return to Shangqing sect with Baili Qingmiao. With him there, Baili Qingmiao wouldn't face any threats to her life. The Shangqing sect disciples could only watch helplessly as Wenren E and Yeen Hanjiang left. After spending a moment in a daze, Baili Qingmiao brought out the moonlit frost silk and dashed toward the sea of flames. "Shimei, what are you doing?" Wenzhao cried. "Rescuing people." Baili Qingmiao wiped away her tears. Zhongli Qian's calm let her realize what she must do at this moment. She couldn't just remain heartbroken at Master Qingxue's betrayal or shocked at Wenren E's ruthlessness. She had to search the field of lava for survivors. Each life she saved counted. Sensing Baili Qingmiao's feelings, Zhongli Qian sighed. He said to Su-huai, "Do you know why, knowing Baili Qingmiao is this foolish, I keep helping her overcome her infatuation?" Su-huai shook his head. "Because Baili Qingmiao is compassionate." Zhongli Qian took off his blindfold, looking at the sea of flames below him. Even though she knows that Tsong-shoo-eh was a demonic sect member, that she once saved the wrong person, she holds no regrets for her actions and still tries to save others now. In their 22 years of traveling together, this was the first time Su-huai had seen Zhongli Qian's eyes. They were stunningly bright and perceptive eyes, calm and penetrating. Using the tracking curse, Zhongli Qian could see what no one else could. He saw how, as Baili Qingmiao charged into the flames, they parted for her and opened up a path. The flames feared her, yet wished to harm her. She sustained burns one after another, but she didn't flinch, continuing her search. None of the Shangqing sect disciples followed her. Wenzhao wanted to dive into the flames with her, but Sheen-yeh was clutching his waist tightly, in a way that said, "If you follow her, I'll go with you to die." Wenzhao was furious, but in the end, he couldn't bring himself to push Sheen-yeh away. After watching for a minute, Zhongli Qian closed his eyes and tied the blindfold back around them. There was nothing more to see. "Mr. Jong-lee," Su-huai said uncertainly. "Look for yourself," Zhongli Qian said to the Shangqing sect members. A figure covered head to toe with soot charged out of the sea of flames. She held a silver silk sash, the other end tied around several dozen unconscious Violet Spirit Pavilion disciples. One of them carried a mature stalk of the Lockhart herb. Baili Qingmiao's legs had been burned, and she could only stand by leaning against Su-huai. She wiped at the ash on her face and said, "None of the pavilion disciples died. Someone transferred them to the place where the Lockhart herb grew. When it matured because of the flames, the power it gave off protected them." She saw that Wenzhao had already replaced the soul of the disciple Tsong-shoo-eh had attacked into his body. Wenren E had overturned heaven and earth when he acted, yet not a single person had died. He'd only taken the pavilion master. Baili Qingmiao glanced over at Zhongli Qian, then fainted. Her spiritual essence had been expended battling the flames. The Shangqing sect finally got their Lockhart herb. They departed, bringing the Violet Spirit Pavilion disciples with them. Along the journey, no one spoke, their thoughts troubled. Wenzhao clenched his fists and said to his mental master, Master, the demonic sects have grown too arrogant. Just a few years ago, they seduced me and broke the... I'm sorry. Just a few years ago, they seduced me and broke the spirit-severing array. Now they've endangered the disciples of the Shangqing sect and Violet Spirit Pavilion. How can I become stronger? How can I get rid of that demonic mastermind, Wenren E? Let's see, the Blood Demon Elder said in his mind. There is a way. How? Wenzhao said, his eyes brightening. As an ancient cultivator, I can tell that Wenren E is cultivating a path that can easily lead to deviation. He has already encountered a problem in his cultivation, so he won't be hard to deal with. We just need some help. He was the first blood cultivator, so of course he could tell that Wenren E hadn't consumed any souls and was already at his limit. What kind of help? Wenzhao asked. Let's see. I'm not too familiar with the cultivators of this age, but a few days ago, didn't you meet an unnamed cultivator? I felt that something was off about him. He gave you his message talisman, no? Yeah. He had one foot in the righteous and demonic paths, but he valued loyalty, so I thought he was worth getting along with. The Blood Demon Elder chuckled. Well, I thought his techniques felt like those of a demonic cultivator. While the Shangqing sect journeyed back, Wenren E had already brought the Pavilion Master to Xuanyuan sect. He immediately called over Altar Master Miao and tossed the Pavilion Master to him. This Venerable wants two things. First, this person needs to willingly hand over a book. Secondly, for the time being, his soul must not be harmed. Use some gentler methods. Hearing Wenren E's orders, an eager smile appeared on Altar Master Miao's face. Understood. Altar Master Yuan, standing to one side, couldn't help but shudder. Everyone knew that in Xuanyuan sect, Protector Chu liked dead people the best, and Altar Master Miao hated killing people the most. In the 10 years of the Great Sect War, Altar Master Miao kept complaining about how it was such a shame so many righteous cultivators died. 1 or 2 could have been left alive for him to raise bugs in. Wenren E had been controlling the demonic sect members for all these years, forbidding them from harming ordinary people. And even if they harmed cultivators, they had to pay attention to the laws of reincarnation and the cycle of karma. They couldn't act against whoever they wanted. Altar Master Miao had been stifled for many years at this point, unable to raise new insects without people as materials. He could only use his own body to feed them. But he was immune to all kinds of poisons and couldn't see the effects of his insects on his own body. He had made hundreds of bugs, but had no one to test them on. Over the years, he had grown more and more off-putting. Now that he had someone to stick bugs in, he was giddy with joy. He promised over and over that he certainly wouldn't let the Pavilion Master die and would let him live very healthily. Seeing how happy Altar Master Miao was, Altar Master Yuan brought out his tortoise shell, shrank inside it, and rolled as far away from him as he could. After handing off the Pavilion Master, Wenren E stopped caring. Only results mattered to him, not how they came about. Wenren E shooed away everyone at the main hall and slowly walked toward his room. Yeen Hanjiang followed as always, without any question as to Wenren E's actions. In his room, Wenren E spoke with his hands behind his back, looking away. You can go now. Understood. Yeen Hanjiang turned around, about to shut the doors behind him, when he was yanked back into the room. He saw Wenren E's eyes reddened, his hand around Yeen Hanjiang's neck, thumb pressing his chin down. Wenren E examined his face closely, as if deciding where to bite. Venerable. Yeen Hanjiang watched Wenren E without any fear. The sword in his hand clattered in warning. As a magic weapon, it had a will to protect its master. If it ever sensed danger, it would warn its master. Yeen Hanjiang never stored his weapon inside his body. Now the army-crushing sword shook itself free of its sheath, pointing its blade at Wenren E. The 7-killing halberd within Wenren E's body sensed the army-crushing sword's hostility and also trembled, bringing Wenren E back to awareness. Wenren E licked his cracked lips and shut his eyes. He let go of Yeen Hanjiang. "Venerable?" Yeen Hanjiang said, trying to quiet his wildly beating heart. He wanted to put his arms around the Venerable, but held them back, grabbing his arms with his hands. "Does the Venerable have any orders?" he said with forced calm. "Sect Leader Yeen, in a few days, this Venerable must go to the Blood Hell. You must stay at Xuanyuan sect and take on my duties. Before then, this Venerable hopes you can reach Mahayana, so as to take leadership." Wenren E spoke with his back turned, not looking at Yeen Hanjiang. Yeen Hanjiang's eyes dulled for a moment. He knew Wenren E as a blood cultivator must cultivate in the blood hell in the future. He also knew his own power was too weak and he would never survive there. It was better if he stay at Xuanyuan sect to keep everything in order for this Venerable. But he bowed his head and said quietly, "This subordinate understands." Upon leaving Wenren E's room, he immediately felt an array go up behind him, preventing him from feeling Wenren E's presence. He looked down at his faintly trembling hands, then took a ghost mask out of his robes and put it on. With the mask on, Yeen Hanjiang miraculously calmed. A voice seemed to say in his mind, "There's no problem. After the Venerable leaves, just follow him secretly." Yeen Hanjiang took off the mask. He thought, "But if the Venerable is gone for so long, what will happen to Xuanyuan sect?" He put the mask back on, and the voice said, "Isn't it easy to keep the sect under control? Protector Shu and Protector Qiu don't get along. Protector Qiu wants to kill Altar Master Shi and find someone to replace him. Altar Master Zhen hates Altar Master Miao. Altar Master Shi is the natural enemy to Altar Master Miao's bugs. Altar Master Yuan is worried about Protector Shu doing away with him and installing someone else. Just get them to fight and kill each other for 100 years, and the Venerable should be back by then." Yeen Hanjiang took off the mask, his eyes expressionless. After a moment, his head turned stiffly, like a puppet's, and a brilliant smile appeared on his face. Inside his room, Wenren E called out the 7-killing halberd, gripping it hard as it tried to escape. It was a part of him, yet when his blood qi raged out of control, it didn't recognize him as its master and tried to leave his body. As Wenren E stared at it, a technique to dissolve and absorb it appeared in his mind. He smacked himself forcefully in the forehead and managed to regain some rationality. He couldn't become a demon, at least not right now. Wenren E had thought that since Wenzhao ascended to the Immortal realm at the end of Volume 1, Volume 2 and 3 wouldn't appear in the cultivation world. He should only be able to find Volume 2 in the Immortal realm. Yet Volume 3 had already appeared, and judging from the timing, it was around the same time as the first. Wasn't it possible that all 3 volumes had appeared simultaneously? That he had been lucky enough to get the first volume, while the other 2 had already been picked up by others and read cover to cover? Abusive Romance had chosen the major male character Wenren E, while God of Annihilation, Volume 1, had chosen the protagonist's good friend, Zhongli Kuang, and the 3rd volume had chosen the main wife, the Violet Spirit Pavilion Master. They were all supporting characters, so the recipient of the 2nd volume should be one as well. All the targets of the books were the closest people to the male or female lead, so judging from that, the recipient of the 2nd volume must likely be the demonic cultivator Cun-Jiang-Qi, or the wandering healer Yao Jia-ping. He had already started searching for Cun-Jiang-Qi. Yao Jia-ping was a wandering immortal whose travels were unpredictable, so he was difficult to find. Actually, it would be best if Yao Jia-ping had the book. He was a wandering immortal, so it would be difficult for him to take action against big sects like Xuanyuan or Shangqing. The worst case was Cun-Jiang-Qi having it. If the demonic sect traitor had the information of the second volume and managed to deduce from it some contents of the first volume, their enemy would have the advantage over them. Thus, he needed to acquire the third volume. He'd skin the Pavilion Master and pull out his tendons if he had to. While Altar Master Meow interrogated the Pavilion Master, Wenren meditated, reciting a clear mind spell. Spending time alone in tranquil surroundings improved his condition by a lot. After 7 days, Altar Master Meow sent word that the Pavilion Master had given in and wanted to speak to Wenren. To reduce temptation, Wenren sealed his senses of smell, taste, and touch, leaving only his hearing and sight. Yeen Hanjiang followed him with a calm expression as he went to find Altar Master Meow. Altar Master Meow had the Pavilion Master in a brightly lit room, lying on the floor like a corpse. He was uninjured, but from time to time, a bump would appear under the skin of his face before disappearing. Who knew how many bugs were in his body? Wenren made everyone else wait outside and remained alone in the room with the Pavilion Master. Since his smell and taste were sealed, he couldn't speak. He transmitted to him. "Have you made your decision?" The Pavilion Master said with difficulty. "They don't call you the Lord of Demons for nothing. So many ways to make someone wish for death. Ways I couldn't even imagine. Tell Altar Master Meow to take the bugs out of my body, and I'll give the book to you." "This Venerable already gave you a chance," Wenren transmitted. "Since you refused then, you don't have the right to negotiate now. Hand over the third volume. After reading it, this Venerable will decide whether or not to remove your parasites. You can continue to refuse. This Venerable isn't in a rush." The Pavilion Master didn't want to endure the agony for one more day. After a moment of hesitation, he gave up on resistance, reaching into his lapel and withdrawing a book. Who knew where his storage item was hidden? Wenren wasn't concerned he was plotting something. He was at their mercy and didn't have the guts. Wenren took the third volume. On the cover was a ruined temple and a silhouetted figure standing before it. That figure seemed indescribably lonely and defeated. He opened it and saw on the title page, "Because of a large plot hole appearing in the story, the closest character to the protagonist has been chosen to help him form a soul bond with Baili Qingmiao." The mission of this volume was to pair up the male and female leads? What for? Once he flipped to the second page, he found a difference from the first volume. There was a summary describing not the first volume, but the second. The summary said, "After many battles, Wenzhao defeated the sky-burning Immortal. Bringing his wives, the Violet Spirit Immortal and Baili Qingmiao with him, he ascended to the divine realm." The burning sky Immortal? Probably, like Wenren he was the mastermind of the second volume, the enemy Wenzhao had to defeat at the end. The readers would call him the final boss. Burning sky. Seeing these words, Wenren was reminded of the first-grade immortal artifact sitting in the Xuanyuan sect forbidden grounds, the burning sky drum. Whew. All right, everyone. That concludes the reading of Devil Venerable Also Wants to Know for today. And the crazy thing is, because we just finished reading Peerless, I was actually going to wait until Monday to start reading, to give a break between the books. But I was like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and get into it. Why not, right? And we'll finish 2 days earlier, which means my break in between reading Devil Venerable and starting Yoo will be greater. 2 days greater. So anyway, let's go ahead and go over my notes. The first thing is, first off, I was super surprised when the Pavilion Master turned out to be a man, and I was like, hold on, what's happening here? But we know that it was just pretending. So anyway, the next thing that I wanted to talk about is actually Wenren's level of control through his struggle, which I don't know if I mentioned that previously, but seeing that he literally had the Pavilion Master's blood in his hands and he could have consumed it, but he didn't. and that wasn't even someone he would personally care about, just shows his level of control. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that he's wanting something else from the pavilion master, so it also makes sense that he would hold back. But we know from previous chapters that he really doesn't want to consume souls, because he knows basically he'll become a bloodthirsty demon. The crazy thing is, though, he's basically become a bloodthirsty demon in many ways, even by denying himself of the blood. So that's a really interesting journey that he's going on, and I feel so bad for his struggle. The next thing I wanted to talk about is a theory someone had several videos ago, I don't remember which video, about maybe Baili Qingmiao and Wenzhao swapping, not fates, but swapping personalities, essentially. And after reading chapter 42 or 43, I don't remember, I think it was 42, we, I guess, kind of know now that that's not necessarily the case, because it's showed that Wenzhao on page, well, it's 476 on my tablet, but it showed that no, Wenzhao, much like he did when, he went up to Ascension or whatever, he has a heart for the people. He cares about them greatly, just like he did in their previous life. So that is a part of him that has never changed. It's just that when we saw him in Ascension, when he was, trying to convince Baili Qingmiao to stop causing the disasters and stuff, we didn't have an opportunity to see how he interacted with women that he may have been interested in, because there were more pressing matters at the time. So just in this new life, now that he is just, human, and we're viewing his life as a human, we're seeing that he still has that heart. But when it comes to women, he sucks. He sucks ass. And then so for Baili Qingmiao, my only guess, with her once being primordial god, she because she didn't have interactions with humans, and she was separated from other regular humans. And so it's possible that just when she was moved down into a human in this life, she's just getting all the emotions that comes with being a human. But not only that, because of all the turmoil and stuff that happened when she was up and ascended as a primordial god and Wenzhao was there, then whatever happened has caused her to care so deeply for and want Wenzhao so deeply. So it seems like their fates haven't really truly swapped, or personalities haven't swapped or anything like that. But now that she's a woman, she's experiencing anyway. Oh man, speaking of Baili Qingmiao though, I honestly kind of feel bad for her, because she's been calling Tsong-shoo-eh her master, Elder Qingxue, and they've been journeying for over 3 decades. And then she finally finds out, like, wow, this woman I've been calling my master and traveling with, eating with, all that stuff, she's part of the demonic sect? What the heck? Oh man, I feel for her. I would be so devastated as well. Even with regard to, like, even thinking about the fact that Qingxue or Tsong-shoo-eh hasn't done anything to her, has even helped her and all that kind of stuff. You can't negate the fact that, like, oh, many years ago, this person helped, defeat / kill a lot of people in my sect. So now speaking, I guess going more into that topic, we know that in the original book of God of Annihilation, Wenzhao became convinced that Wenren E was to blame for many things. I think his family being massacred or something like that, and ended up wanting to kill him. So I'm wondering, first off, if that has even been said at this point. Probably not. But given that Wenren E just revealed himself at the pavilion and how everything took place there, I'm wondering if that is going to truly push him and give him the new motivation to, like, yeah, let's try to kill Wenren E. Which makes me concerned, because at the end of the day, Wenzhao is the protagonist of his book. and the protagonist always wins. So I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? How is Wenren going to win in the end? You know, we're not there. We're only 56% through the book, but how is he going to win in the end? But then the other thing is like, well, Wen-jow may be the protagonist of his book, but Wenren is the protagonist of of this book. So he's got to come through. He's got to pull through some way, somehow. And we'll just see how these things are going to work out. Anyway, one of the things that Wenren had said to Baili Qingmiao previously was, we'll see, you know, how you feel when your sect turns on you. And she was like, why in the world would my sect turn on me? What do you mean? And I was thinking about, you know, before he left the pavilion to go back to Xuanyuan's sect, he had offered her to come and she declined. And I'm wondering, after having spent 3 decades with Elder Qingxue / Chu Tsong-shoo-eh, if that will be something that causes her sect to turn on her. And we'll see if that happens. We'll see what she does and where she goes. We do know that Jong-lee Qian is by her side, so it's not like they're gonna kill her or anything like that. But we'll see what happens, is all I can say. The other thing that I really appreciate is that Wenren is he's very thoughtful. He doesn't want innocent people involved in the mess that is in the cultivation world, whatever they're doing, you know. And when it's stated that someone had moved the pavilion people residents to somewhere safe where that thing was growing, I was like, was it Wenren or did he have Yeen Hanjiang do that? You know, because I'm sure that was something that was considered while he was making his mess, because he's not the one that just kills innocent people. And we know that from reading this past chapter about, you know, the rules and regulations that he has for his people. So anyway, the last thing I want to talk about, Yeen Hanjiang. Is your mask talking to you? What is in that mask? Because when Wenren looked in it, everything was fine and it was just a normal mask. But now it's not? Or do you just feel like you're changing when you put your mask on and then your brain is still talking to you and then you take it off and you like, I don't know. Do you have some split personality thing going on where you feel like you put the mask on, you're one, take the mask off, you're another? I don't know. I guess we'll see more into that later. Anyway, please, you guys, let me know your thoughts and reactions to these chapters. And I will see you guys on Friday. Technically, I'm finishing the reading of this on Wednesday, but I will see you guys Friday. Oh my God. Well, I ain't even.